So, I wanted to talk today about how we can make the teaching on emptiness relevant in our daily lives. Because it's very easy that we hear about emptiness and we think, we develop some view of nothingness. We think, oh, everything is empty, so nothing matters or nothing is real. And that's really the opposite of the meaning of the teachings on emptiness. Emptiness doesn't mean nothing exists. It means that things are empty of or innocent of existing in a distorted way, but it doesn't mean they don't exist at all. I know it's complicated. But it's really important not to just think nothing exists. I think if someone punched you in the face or if you got a headache, you would agree that although the headache is empty of true existence, it nevertheless performs a function, exists conventionally, we would say. So, one of the ways that Lama Zopa Rinpoche helps us to think about emptiness or ways of thinking about emptiness in daily life is to think of the way that the I appears to us. So he says one of the things you can do is when you're sitting, ask yourself, why do I say I am sitting? I'm sitting right now. Why do I say I am sitting? Because the body is sitting. Or if I'm cooking, why do I say I am cooking? Because the body is engaged in certain activities. And the same with thinking, dancing, moving. Rinpoche really invites us during the day to ask the question, why do I say I am doing this? What's the reason that we say that? And that can help us to check and to see what's the aggregate that I'm putting the I on top of. And he says that's a really helpful way for us to loosen our attachment to this I that we cherish so dearly. And there's another way that we can use the teachings, even when we don't have the realization of emptiness, so we're all doing our best. But one way that we can also reflect on this idea of emptiness, the when we say emptiness of inherent existence, what are we trying to get at? Or when things are designated by name and conceptuality, merely designated by name and conceptuality, what does that mean? It means that whatever our conceptual consciousness has come up with in terms of name and meaning and function that has been designated onto the basis means that that exists conventionally, but the basis of designation is empty from its own side of existing in some essential way by way of its own characteristics as the thing designated. I know, it sounds complicated. Let's give an example. So, um, let's say our neighbor, if they take a key, don't have my key, if they take a key and scratch our car, immediately they will appear to us as an enemy quite naturally. They've done something, we generate anger on the basis of that. Now they appear as the enemy, and they seem to appear as enemy from their own side. But that's a designation, that's a meaning, that's a name and interpretation that we have put onto them independence on certain behaviors, but it's not essentially there. It's not there from the side of the object. It's not there from the side of the person. If it were, everyone who looks at that person would see it the same way. But we don't think in this way. So events of our lives happen, and we never consider that there is something that we are adding on top that then appears back to us in that way. For example, someone told me I always use the example of football, but it's really helpful. When I arrived, I was traveling to the place where I live. Somebody asked me if I'm a Rome Football Club supporter because of the color of my robes. I had no idea what he was asking me, but maybe dependent on whether he likes Rome or not, I might then appear to him as a friend or as a rival. But there's nothing inherently Rome in my robes. They're just material in a certain color. And you might say, well, that's really obvious. We understand all that, you know, but do we? Because it's very easy for us on the basis of certain signs and symbols. Yes, let's say by convention, these are Rome colors. Apparently they are. But if I really love or I really hate Rome, it's really easy when attachment or aversion arises in my mind that affliction becomes sort of like glasses that I look through onto the object, and the object appears back to me essentially from its own side as either desirable or something I want to push away. So we never consider the possibility that maybe a delusion is arising in my mind, coloring my mind like ink, and I'm looking at the world through that, projecting onto it. It appears back to me, and I act as if it were true, depending on whether attachment or aversion is arising in my mind. I have to think of an example that isn't about football. So when I started learning Spanish again, I was sitting in class looking at my teacher, who I've known for some time, but suddenly now it seemed like he's wearing the Spanish colors, right? Because I'm learning Spanish, I see the yellow and maroon, and it looks like he's wearing Spanish colors. But in fact, he's wearing the colors that he's always worn. It's only from my side, now that I'm learning Spanish again, I look at him and I project Spanish onto him, and then I'm happy because I quite like that. Other examples are flags. We tend to feel quite happy when we see our flag. So, half of my family is Irish, and in the Irish flag, there is green and white and yellow, or orange, I suppose. And each of those colours has a specific meaning. And no doubt, when if one is Irish, when one sees the flag, you might feel happy about it. And there's a lot of pride, we put great meaning into flags. And I may have told the story before how, well, long story short, my uncle, who's from Ireland, was saying if he went to the wrong place at the wrong time, there would be risk of violence simply because of his flag. And yet, as if that flag has a certain property in and of itself. But if you turn the flag upside down, it's the flag of the Ivory Coast, and each of the colours has a different meaning. Now, from the side of the flag, you've got three horizontal stripes, which have no meaning whatsoever. There's no essence of Irishness, there's no essence of Ivory Coast whatsoever. You've got green, white, and orange arranged in a certain formation. From the side of the object, there is no meaning of country or nationality whatsoever. From our side, if we've learned what the flags mean, we project onto it meaning, identity, and then dependent on our own aggregates, because remember, the imprints of the afflictions are in our aggregates. The imprints of the afflictions are our aggregate of non-associated compositional factors. So from our side, in our bucket, in our aggregates of non-associated compositional factors, technical term, arises the affliction. We put on our glasses, we look through the vision of our afflictions, attachment, aversion, and dependent on whether I like Ivory Coast or Ireland, when I see the flag, I might cheer or I might boo, and I will act as if that identity is really there in the basis. Can you see? So the application of emptiness, the understanding that the basis is just a basis of designation onto which we designate meaning and story. and then we act as if it is true. So it's really helpful in any given situation to ask ourselves, am I really seeing this objectively? What might I be adding? Because we don't just add names and identities. There's wonderful work by, oh, I've forgotten her name, Carolyn Miss. We create stories of entire archetypal narratives and impute and designate those onto ourselves and others. Psychologists talk about the drama triangle, in which there has to be a victim, a persecutor, and a savior. We project entire stories, not just names and labels, if only. We project entire dramas, fairy tales, archetypes, narratives. From where? From our imprints, from our storehouse of non-associated compositional factors, from our rucksack of experiences and filters that we developed trying to navigate the sea of samsara. But we never consider that we might be putting identity and meaning and characteristics onto what is just, a basis, three colors. And so, what the teachings on emptiness can help us understand is maybe something is coming from my side, and maybe I'm putting it onto the object. And if one time in 100 we can even question, am I doing that? What am I bringing? Then we can reduce difficulty for ourselves and others. It's a sort of temporary way of using the teaching on emptiness to help reduce our afflictions. Of course, we need the direct realization of emptiness to uproot the afflictions, but we've got to do our best until then, right? Nice work if you can get it. We all want the direct realization of emptiness. Any realization will do. But we have to find a way until then. So remembering that the basis is empty of the designation, it's innocent of the designation, it functions. We all agree that red, yellow, and green at an intersection functions as a traffic light, and we have conventions about what to do. But green, illuminated from its own side, has no inherent existence as the meaning of go, nor does red from its own side have inherent existence as the meaning stop. It functions, we've created a convention, we've put a meaning on top, and thank goodness, most of the time I'm told, I'm told that south of Rome, red is just sort of optional. It doesn't really mean stop, it means, you know, if you like, you can stop. So in most of the world, red means stop. Parts of the world. Maybe not some places. I don't know. Maybe Germany and the UK. I don't know. Because now I'm thinking India. Yeah, India, red doesn't mean stop either. Anyway, you get the point, right? We've all reached more or less an agreement, a convention that these colors have meaning, but from the side of the colors, there's no essence of stop, go, or wait. Same with flags, same with horizontal stripes. So, where does all the meaning come from? And what are we adding on top? And are we even conscious of it? Thinking in that way is also a really practical application of the teachings on emptiness, considering what might I be adding from my afflictions and judgments and filters and experiences. Not because I'm good or bad, just because I've been doing my best to figure out this thing called life. And I have my backpack full of coping strategies that maybe are projecting things that might not be there in the object I'm looking at. That's a much more helpful way of applying the teachings on emptiness than simply thinking, it's all empty, therefore nothing exists, which is not the meaning at all. The teachings on emptiness mean that things are empty of intrinsic existence, but function conventionally. And Lama Tzong Khapa says, until we've got the unity of those two, we really haven't grasped the meaning of emptiness. So we've got to stay kind of humble and do our best until we get those two together. And so questioning ourselves and our projections is a really helpful way of implementing teachings on emptiness until we're able to get the realization.